Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the moment of truth. The fight to make black people the face of anti-Semitism continues, and it's only intensifying, because attacking black people galvanizes all the white supremacists across the board. Their religious, political, and ideological differences disappear when it's time to attack us. And a lot of people who apparently thought that they were on the team, that they had found a comfortable place under white supremacy, that because they had gotten a couple of bones from these racists, that apparently that meant that they were safe. Well, what they're finding out is, you better stay on that plantation. Yeah, we got Clarence Thomas and others saying, the problem is, if you decide that you're gonna leave the Democrat plantation, you'll be punished. Well, the Republicans don't just have a plantation, they've got their own private prison, and they've made it where these little right-wing mouthpieces are the prison guards, making sure that the Negroes and their employees stay in place. Candace Owens has recently been brought in to get the business. She's been getting handled by her former right-wing pals, who she used to have nothing but praise for. What's happened most recently is Candace Owens challenged Ben Shapiro, her former colleague, to a debate. Apparently they were going to be debating about Israel. And while Ben Shapiro and his pals were publicly making it sound as if they were getting ready for the debate and they were ready to do this, what they didn't tell anybody was that at that exact same time, behind Candace Owens' back, they had run to an arbitrator and said that Candace Owens was in violation of the contract that she had signed with the Daily Wire, and because she was, they say, disparaging Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire, that they needed to have a gag order put on her. This is a gag order not by a court, but by a private arbitrator. Now, from what I understand, Candace Owens was neither alerted to this maneuver that Ben Shapiro was trying to do. She was not warned that this was happening. She was not advised about it. And to the best of my knowledge, from what I understand, she was not actually given an opportunity to be there. This was all done without her being in attendance. Now, keep in mind, this was not a court of law. This was an arbitration, which meant that basically both sides agree to have this so-called neutral third party as the one who calls balls and strikes when it comes to whether or not somebody's violating the contract. And even though this was not a court of law, I can still use the legal phrase ex parte is what this was. An ex parte meeting is when one side in a particular lawsuit is there, but the other side is not. Now, typically, if this was a court of law, you wouldn't have that. You can't just have it where one side is allowed to speak to the judge and the other side's not there at all. But this isn't a court of law. And Candace Owens should have known better. All that time that she spent denying that racism exists and saying that only the Democrats or the white left are racist, or only these little black race hustlers like Jesse Jackson, etc., just regurgitating the white rights talking points. And now she's being muzzled by her own pals on the white right. And she can't say anything about it. See what I did there? Now, ordinarily, this might be the time to say that Candace Owens ought to give some really sharp comments about these guys, but that's the entire reason that she's in this predicament to begin with. Because Ben Shapiro, apparently, he must have been the one, I guess, who chose whoever the arbitrator was, somebody who he could rely on to, in any sort of dispute, side with him. And now Candace Owens is finding herself on the receiving end of the white right's little maneuvers and all this stuff that they do when they're attacking people by all of these otherwise extra legal means, because they don't have the public support to actually cram down the people's throats what they actually want to do, so they got to do stuff like this instead. Candace Owens was a beneficiary of these people, and now she's one of their targets. But she did it to herself. And of course, you got a whole lot of these folks who like to consider themselves to be more or less ideologically courageous. They're saying that Ben Shapiro has now sacrificed his credibility with this cowardly move, but let's be honest. Did Ben Shapiro ever have any credibility to begin with? The racist rubes who listen to that clown, they don't do it because they think that he's objectively right. They listen to him because he plays to their own immorality, stupidity, and biases. He's nothing more than bias confirmation. They know that he'll never tell them that their racial privilege means that no one's responsible for their condition but themselves. The people who keep talking about personal responsibility don't take any. And that being the case, Ben Shapiro is made to order. Shapiro simultaneously claims that there's no racism while pointing at Jesse Jackson or Al Sharpton and saying they promote racism. Never mind the fact that the conservatives, of which Ben Shapiro is a part of, and the white right, that he's one of the main mouthpieces for, one of the main big mouths for, these people on a near daily basis have another scandal about some racist stuff that they have said. And yet Ben Shapiro doesn't feel as if there's something wrong with that. You never hear him saying, but with all these instances going on, this is definitely a definable pattern. You can't exactly deny that kind of thing. And when you have a situation like this where it's intellectually dishonest for you to decide that you're going to wallpaper it over, and that being the case, we got to be honest about ourselves. Maybe the left can be biased, but we can't. We got to be honest. He never does that. Instead, he just flies right by it at 1,000,000 miles an hour, or he just ignores it altogether. Ben Shapiro was the champion of telling college kids that facts don't care about their feelings, and that they need to get a thicker skin, start being adults, stop being snowflakes, and that the college campuses have to be free fire zones for offensive ideas, and that nobody should expect to have their feelings spared. Well, that's what he was saying before the campus protests of the last few weeks. Now, the same Ben Shapiro, when talking about college campuses, he's not talking about, well, the college campuses have to be free fire zones for offensive ideas. That's how we arrive at truth. Instead, he's saying shut down any sort of speech that he doesn't approve of, because the young people are saying things he doesn't like. And they're doing it in numbers large enough that they simply cannot be ignored. Now, when it was Ben Shapiro and his racist pals like Ed Blum spewing anti-black rhetoric, defending and propping up anti-black violence, Ben Shapiro was the one saying that shouldn't be a problem for anyone to hear, and that if you don't want him to talk like that, well, young people need to understand they're being snowflakes. Only a coward is afraid of words. And now that you have a bunch of young people on college campuses passionately denouncing Israel, Ben Shapiro wants to be protected from people's words. This guy has numerous videos of himself arguing with college kids, and here one of his former colleagues challenges him to a debate, and he goes behind her back to pull a crook move so he doesn't have to debate her. That tells you everything you need to know about what Ben Shapiro thinks about the stability and about the credibility of his own so-called views. If Ben Shapiro didn't want to debate Candace Owens, all he had to do was simply say, I don't want to debate her. But of course, this is a guy who likes to pretend as if he's some sort of genius. So here he is, the guy who claims that he doesn't have a problem with offensive speech because he's not a snowflake. And Candace Owens says some mildly critical stuff about Israel. As far as he's concerned, she needs to be gagged. She needs to have her hair cut off. She needs to have her tongue cut out. Nobody should be able to hear anything from her because she's criticizing Israel, and for him, that's just too much. His little sensitive feelings can't take that. And of course, you have that anti-Semitism bill that's making its way through the U.S. Congress. It has to do with what kind of funding should get pulled from universities and such if they allegedly commit the crime of supporting anti-Semitism. What's supporting anti-Semitism? If you criticize Israel. Well, I thought anti-Semitism had to do with Jews, not with a nation. Well, it's the same thing. Which, of course, is a lie, but still. This is what's going on right now, and you can bet that Ben Shapiro is in support of that. I've told you for the longest time there was an obvious reason why the Democrats have not been doing anything about all of the laws regarding curtailing of free speech that the Republican states have been passing. Attacking books, trying to weave slavery as a good thing into the school curriculum. Why have the Democrats not been doing anything about that? They're showing you why. The Democrats were the ones who went whole hog and said, we're going to make sure that you can't criticize Israel because there's a greater principle at work here. Both the Democrats and the Republicans have an anti-black agenda that they're trying to pursue and preserve. And now, with the criticism of Israel reaching a fever pitch, we see that neither party wants so-called free speech at all. And the white right is now being hoisted on their own petard, if I may use that antiquated saying. These are the people who are claiming that you can't say what you want to say on college campuses. Free speech needs to be brought to college campuses. And now you have red state governors like Greg Abbott who are doing everything that they can to make sure that college people cannot speak at all. The white right can't deny that what they've complained about as being a snowflake is now being protected by the GOP. They can't deny that anymore. Ben Shapiro's going overboard to do all the things that he used to tell the white right was wrong. That's because nothing that he cared about was being criticized or otherwise brought in for abuse. But now that it is, all of a sudden, he's saying, let's shut everybody up. Free speech be damned. For the lurkers and trolls who try to tell us that black people need to side with the Republican Party, this is what you're saying to side with. And by the way, this does not mean that Candace Owens is any sort of hero. That's the last thing she is. She spent all these years bragging about her being an immigrant and how that makes her higher and better than black Americans, and how her immigrant culture was superior to black American culture. And she knows full well that the white right uses the word culture as a euphemism for race. That's a little code word. When they say that not all cultures are created equal, what they mean is not all races are created equal, and Candace Owens played right along with it. She echoed all of their little talking points. Well, times like this, she needs to call on her islander kinfolks to help her out. After all, they stick together, right? They have a long track record of standing up to these white supremacists, right? And when Candace Owens calls on them, they'll answer because they support her and all the grimy stuff that she's been saying. Right? The white right and their bootlicks empty talking points are getting put to the test, not by the censorious left that they complained about, but by other right-wingers. And of course, because these guys are all a bunch of moral frauds and intellectual cowards, they're not going to be pointing at themselves and saying, you know what, guys, this exposes that we have a hell of a lot of problems that we've been denying, and we need to go ahead and root out these problems. We need to go ahead and get rid of the rot. No, instead what they'll be saying is nothing at all. They'll be trying to dance around this. Not only has Ben Shapiro been exposed for the liar and intellectual coward he's always been, but Candace Owens has also been exposed as a lousy judge of character. That's the reason why she's trying to slither her way back over to the side of black folks. She's trying to slither her way back into this corner. But she's not going to admit that she was wrong, and she's been wrong for a very long time. That's how these guys operate. When they predictably get their butts in a crack, they want to come run into black folks, but not have to admit that they were wrong. At no point are they going to say, I was wrong, oh my God, I got a lot to atone for. Instead, it's going to be, I wasn't really wrong. Just like Omarosa, the hood rat that sat by the door, and now Candace Owens can be added to that pathetic little list. Of course, Candace Owens is a lousy judge of character, because she doesn't have any to begin with. For the longest time, there's been many of you who had wanted me to do a video about Candace Owens. For many, many years, we've had people ask me, Professor, why don't you go ahead and do a video about Candace Owens? How come you don't say anything about Candace Owens? You need to call her out. You need to challenge her to a debate. All those people who spent years saying that. Professor, why don't you debate Candace Owens or something? You want to know why? Because she would run from me the same way that Ben Shapiro's running from her. So you can go ahead and take solace, all of you people who have been sending me messages like that for years. All of you people who have been saying, somebody needs to shut Candace Owens up. Well, that's exactly what's happened. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Nico, Mulba Darwulo, Robert Dodson, Hildman Gallo, and Kevin Harrelson. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.